entity is in a position to sell it once that intangible asset come into the picture. The availability of adequate technical, financial and other resources should be there with the entity, and ability to measure the reliable expenditure which is attributable to intangible asset is another criteria which an entity should meet to ensure that yes, something is coming up as an developed intangible asset which can be recognized as intangible asset. Let's see certain examples of it. Example of development activities. So the design, construction and testing of any pre-production and proto-use prototype and models. The designing of any tools, jigs, molds, dies involving new technology. The design and construction and operation of a pilot plan which is not for of an of a scale economically feasible for commercial production. So as an example of this, many a times it happens that you have a pilot plan which is in operation. However, you are having that plan to demonstrate it to the commercial people, demonstrate it to the industry, various industries, that this is this if they install it in the commercial production and they take it for the commercial production, it will work in a well versed plan. So any such design or any construction and operation of any such pilot plan, which is eventually for a commercial production feasibility. However, right now it is only of a normal operational perspective to demonstrate to the industries and not of a scale of economically feasibility, is as good as a development phase. So the designing, construction and testing of chosen alternative for new and improved material, devices, product, processes, system and services is another example of development phase. Moving to the measurement. Measurement. So initial measurement, how you measure initially any intangible asset which you has recognized as intangible asset. The initial recognition should always be measured at cost. What includes in that cost and what should not be included in that cost, we will surely see shortly. This measurement is very important to be analyzed, and this criteria will be seen from various type of intangible assets. Like if you have separately acquired intangible asset, then the cost will become your measurement. If you have internally generated or developed intangible asset, then you can measure only if it meets the definition and the recognition criteria. Moving to the subsequent expenditure. If you have subsequent did some expenditure on the acquisition of intangible asset, you measure that intangible asset only if that is meeting the definition and the recognition criteria. If it is in progress research, then you need to expense off. You cannot recognize it. However, if it is a development project, then you refer the conditions and fulfilling that condition will lead to the recognition and the measurement of developed asset as intangible asset. There is a subsequent expenditure, if any, on the self-generated and developed intangible asset, then you measure only if it meets the definition and the recognition criteria. This intangible asset can also come into the picture, as I told you, at the time of business combination, which is under IFRS 3. And how we do the measurement? As per IFRS 3, the measurement of any intangible asset which is acquired in a business combination should be done at the fair value, and that at the date of acquisition. Intangible asset can be acquired by way of government grants. And then how we value it from? In IS 20 also we talked about it. Either it should be the fair value or the nominal value. And what could be the example of an intangible asset from government grant? Licenses. Government provides so many different licenses, fishing license, telecommunication license and all. So these licenses are very much in nature of intangible asset, and at the time of acquisition through government grant, we do it at fair value or the nominal value. Now It may be the case that you acquired an intangible asset in exchange of asset. And if that is the case, how you valued it? You valued at fair value. Now, coming to the measurement, that what is the cost? What we include in the cost? So this cost includes the purchase price of intangible asset. It includes all import duty and taxes. However, non-refundable purchase taxes are not part of it, like SENVIT. After deducting trade discounts and rebates, if you have received any trade discount and rebates, that should also be excluded from the purchase price. The intangible asset cost also includes any directly attributable cost of preparing that asset for its intended use. Like if you have cost of employee benefit, direct labor expenses, professional fees you have paid to get the license, or any cost of testing you've done well when you see the operativeness of any asset, then these are the costs which become the part of intangible asset and capitalize in your books of accounts. Very important to note down that what are the costs then what should not be included while the capitalization of an intangible assets. So any cost of introducing a new product or service, including your cost of advertising and promotional activities. So for an example, if you have you got a new license from government and you organize a great party around it, so that is basically you are doing some advertising, you are doing some promotional activities where you are trying to fetch the customers from the market for your services, but that is not going to be capitalized in your the cost of intangible asset. Cost of conducting business in a new location and with a new class of customer. So this is more around the cost of staff training or attracting new customers, and if you are doing your business in a new location, so this is also a cost which should not be included as a part of intangible asset. Administration and general overhead, cost incurred while an asset capable of operating in a manner which is intended by the management has not yet been brought into the use. Until and unless an asset has come with an intention or to the level which a management is intended to use, all those expenditure are initial operating expenses, and that should not be capitalized. That should be expense of. Any initial operating losses, such as those incurred while demand for the asset output is building up, is also excluded from the cost of capitalization. For example, we all know that generally when we install a new machinery, it takes a period of time to achieve to the level of output or the expected output from the machinery. So if any losses you are incurring before achieving that output level, then that expense or that loss should not be the part of cost of intangible asset. So what is the important key note with respect to the measurement? While measuring any asset, whether to be capitalized or whether to be expense of, it's important to note down that any expenditure on any intangible asset that was initially recognized as an expense shall not be recognized as part of cost of intangible asset at a later stage. Even if at the later stage something has been established, has fulfilled the condition of development, but still only from the date the establishment of the fact is come into the picture that an asset can be achieved as development phase, then only you can start capitalizing. Before that, all expenditure should be expense of or considered under as good as the research phase. Moving to the recognition and measurement in case of exchange of asset. I told you how you do the measurement. It should be at the fair value. So International Accounting Standard 38 has defined that the cost of such an intangible asset is measured at fair value unless the exchange transaction lack commercial substance. So this commercial substance is very important to note down as a professional and understanding that how you define and how you understand something as commercial substance. Commercial substance, which is the market can understand, industrialists or the users can understand it, and also commercial substance which can be sellable in the market, which has a market value, the fair value. or the fair value of neither the asset received or the asset given up is reliably measured. So if these two criteria are not met, then uh, you need to take some other value, but otherwise else you need to consider the fair value. If the acquired asset is not measured at fair value, its cost is measured at the carrying value of the asset given up. So what is the alternative value? The alternative value is the carrying value, the value at which you are showing that asset which you are giving up in exchange of another intangible asset. That value can become the cost of your intangible asset. Now, after the initial measurement, coming to the measurement which is called a subsequent measurement, or we also can mention as measurement after recognition, and this is at the reporting period. So, an entity should choose either the cost model and evaluation model as its accounting policy. And this is same, as we did in IAS 16 under the property, plant and equipment, that measurement after recognition for the property, plant and equipments also, we need to choose either a cost model or evaluation model. So once we accounted for any asset as an evaluation model applied, then we apply to the entire class of assets unless there is no active market. So if there is no active market, then you need to apply the cost model. Else you apply the revaluation model, because you need to know the revalued value or the market value under the revaluation model. So as for the keynote over here, the revaluation should be made with such regularity that at the end of the reporting period, the carrying value of the asset does not differ materially from its fair value. You know why? Because many a times people think that this revaluation need to be done every year. No, this revaluation need not to be done at every reporting period. This revaluation is done with such a period wherein the entity or the people who are working around the fixed asset maintenance registers and accounting, they analyze that the carrying value should not be differ materially from its fair value. So coming to the understanding of cost model and evaluation model. At cost model is simple. We carry the value of an asset at cost less any accumulated amortization, because on intangible asset we have amortization, and less any accumulated impairment losses. And if an entity is following revaluation model, then the entity carry that asset at revalued amount being its fair value at the revaluation date, less any subsequent amortization and less subsequent accumulated impairment losses. So impairment losses we have already covered under IAS 36. Now let's build more understanding and around the revaluation model. Under the revaluation model, let's take an example which help you to get the complete clarity that how to deal when we conduct revaluation of an asset and the value either increase or decrease. So for example, initially the carrying value of an intangible assets in your books is $100, and when you conduct a revaluation in the market, you got to know that the revalued value of the asset is 120. It means the 20 is the revaluation surplus. And how we account for it? We account the revaluation surplus as $20 in other comprehensive income, which is part of equity. On the other hand, it could be the case that when you did the revaluation of the asset, instead of increasing of its value, you have observed that the value has been reduced. So this reduction in value is nothing but as good as your impairment. So you book the impairment loss in your profit and loss account as 20. Moving to the the case wherein when you initially went for the revaluation of intangible asset and you have observed the value has been increased from $100 to 120. If there is a further increase in the next reporting period when you conduct the revaluation to 130, this increase should also add to the revaluation surplus. However, now in this case, if the further devaluation has been done, so this will be considered as the reversal of revaluation surplus first. You utilize your standing other comprehensive income amount, and if there is still reduction, then that will be considered as impairment loss and taken to the profit and loss account. As in this case, the value which was $120 reduction to $90. So 20 was already there in revaluation surplus. So first you do the reversal of that revaluation surplus, and balance $10 has been taken as impairment loss in profit and loss account. Moving to the next part of the example, wherein the value from $100 has been reduced to 80, and you have considered impairment loss of 20. If the from the value of $80, the value at the time of revaluation on the next reporting period has increased to $110. So this is reversal of impairment loss. And then you need to take it to your profit and loss account to the extent which you have already debited. So here you will credit by $20, and the balance increase of $10 will be considered now as revaluation surplus. On the other hand, the last, very simple, if the value has again decreased, again, the deterioration is there in your asset, it means this is impairment loss, and you take it to the profit and loss account. This concept really help you to in the practical scenario, also as well as in your examination situation, that if an asset is on revaluation model, how to account for the same in your financial statements. Measurement. In measurement, very important aspect, and that's very specific to the intangible assets only. Because in case of intangible asset, it may be the case that it has a finite life or infinite life, and thus it leads to a concept of useful life in case of measurement of intangible asset. So an entity should assess the life of intangible asset as finite and infinite. If for the finite, we can have lots of example. An entity have received a license which for 5 years, so we know that this intangible asset is a finite life of 5 years. Let's take an example of infinite life of an intangible asset. Formula of Coke. The Coke formula having an indefinite life. And if you ask the entity that, how long this intangible asset, the formula, which gonna be sustained for you, for the entity, it is like lifelong. So that is how we need to consider or take into account for an intangible asset, whether it has a finite life or infinite life. An asset, if has an infinite life, it means there is no foreseeable limit of the period over which the asset can be expected to generate the cash inflow for an entity. So, what are the factors to decide the life of an intangible asset? These are all factors help you as a professional to evaluate the useful life of an asset. The expected uses, the product life cycle, technical, commercial, and other type of obsolescence, stability of an industry and the changes in the market demand, expected action by the competitors, period of control, contractual and legal terms, and may demand depends upon the useful life of an asset. So if you come, one of the example like, uh, the, the obsolescence. If you have a formula, if you have a design, and in the market there is some new designs have come up, then the old design will be obsolete. If you see in case of Windows 7, then Windows 8 comes up, which obsolete the earlier Windows of, in the field of computers. So this is one of the example when the new technology obsolete the earlier technology, and that leads to the decision making of the revision in the useful life of the existing life of any intangible asset. Similarly, the expected action by competitors, if your competitors come up with something new and they are trying to capture the market, then that will impact your existing market, and you need to evaluate the expected life of your existing product. Period of control, contraction, and legal terms is generally applied in case of licenses. So if you have a legal or the contractual right of using that license for 5 years, then that is another important factor which is reflecting you the usage of your life of the intangible asset. Coming to the amortization, because On the basis of the useful life of an asset, you need to amortize in your books of accounts. So amortization is the systematic allocation of the depreciable amount of an intangible asset over its useful life. So it's simple. If an asset has definite useful life or finite useful life, then you can start the amortization when the asset is available for use. And this amortization method should reflect that the pattern in which asset is going to give the future economic benefit expected to be consumed by the entity, and generally it is based on the usage, the life over which you are expecting that entity, the asset will give you the future economic benefit. Else you can use the straight line method. And this amortization uh, charge should be recognized in profit and loss account from the accounting perspective. The important the part come into the picture when an asset has indefinite useful life. You cannot amortize it because you don't have a definite life to amortize it. So an intangible asset with an indefinite useful life, you cannot amortize it, and that's why IAS 38 has defined that you need to test it for impairment. Apply IAS 36, the requirement of impairment, and then do the testing of impairment of intangible asset with indefinite life at the reporting period. You need to review of amortization period, amortization method, and useful life. And when to review it? For asset having a finite useful life, you have to annually review both the amortization period and the method. And if there is any change, that need to be accounted for under IAS 30, IAS 8. IAS 8 is on change in accounting estimates and accounting policies. For an asset having indefinite useful life, the useful life of an intangible asset that is not being amortized shall be reviewed annually. You need to evaluate whether the life has been changed from indefinite to definite, and if that is the case, you need to change it from indefinite to the definite time period, and accordingly you need to amortize your asset. The change of useful life assessment from indefinite to finite need to be accounted for as a change in accounting estimate in accordance with International Accounting Standard 8. Now, moving and coming towards the retirement and disposal of intangible asset. We all know if we have an asset in our books of account, over the period of time, and if we have sell that asset or dispose of, if that asset is not giving us future economic benefit and something like that, we need to dispose it off from our books. We need to consider its retirement. So an intangible asset should be de-recognized on the disposal, or when no future economic benefits are expected from its use or disposal. The disposal may be occurred in a variety of ways: by sale of that asset, by entering into a finance lease, because in case of finance lease, the asset, the right to use of an asset, and because of the substance over form nature, the asset become of lessee, not remain in the books of lessor. And it may be the case of donation. The important from the accounting perspective over here is to know that any gain or loss which is arising from the derecognition of an intangible asset should be difference between the disposal proceed and the carrying amount, and is recognized in profit and loss account. So the gain should not be classified as revenue. So we know that we need to take it at profit and loss account, but this is not revenue. This is actually a gain because this is not from your operating activities. Coming to the disclosure requirements, the extensive disclosure is there around intangible assets. An entity should disclose for each class of intangible asset the useful life of the infinite or the finite period, the useful life or the amortization rates, the amortization method, which method has been used, the gross carrying amount and the accumulated amortization at the beginning and the end of the period, the line of the statement of comprehensive income in which any amortization of intangible asset is included. An entity should also give a reconciliation between the carrying value of the intangible asset at the beginning and the end of the period, and it includes intangible asset carrying value in the beginning, addition during the period, amortization, any impairment, and the closing value or the end value of the intangible asset, and ensure that this need to be done for each class of intangible asset. An entity not only the basic disclosure but should also disclose the reason which should support that how they have assessed the indefinite useful life of an asset, a description and the carrying value and the remaining amortization period for that asset. For intangible asset acquired by way of government grant, and if the intangible asset has been acquired by way of government grant, how you have initially recognized it at fair value or the carrying value, or which model you have chosen it. The existence and the carrying amount of intangible asset whose title is restricted. The users and the stakeholders are very much interested to know if you have an intangible asset or any asset wherein the title is restricted. So it is important information for the stakeholder. The amount of contractual commitment for the acquisition of intangible asset. If you have already entered into a contractual commitment that you are supposed to buy an intangible asset, that is become a part of disclosure requirement. If an intangible asset are accounted for a revalued amount, then an entity should disclose the class of intangible asset, the date of revaluation, the carrying amount of revalued intangible asset, and the amount of revaluation surplus. If how much is in your OCI, which is standing at the closing period, indicating the change during the period, if there is restriction on the distribution of the balance to shareholders, and the method and the significant assumptions which you have applied while estimating the fair value of the asset. So this was all around the disclosure requirement, and the most important part is because only in case of intangible asset we have talked about the research and development expenditure, and we understood in case of research we need to expense off, and in case of development expenditure we capitalize the value. So an entity should disclose the aggregate amount of research and development expenditure which they have recognized as an expense during the period. Another last keynote which is coming up, it says that IS 38 has mentioned that entity is, they encouraged any entity but not required that they can have additional disclosures which is helpful and important for the stakeholders. So guys, this was all around intangible assets, its understanding, objective, scope. Then we followed the recognition. We have covered the aspect of research and development, internally generated intangible asset. Then uh, after the measurement, the post or the recognition after measurement, that followed by the extensive disclosure requirement. And so you can gain more understanding around it by reading it from the material which IACT has shared with you, and I welcome your Q&As now. Thank you.